Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Bengal Chamber thanks you all for participating in the one of the Chamber's flagship conclave, Manufacturing Conclave. The Bengal Chamber, the oldest chamber of India, has been facilitating business since its inception, facilitating manufacturing and connecting MSMEs with the large manufacturers is one of the key focus areas of the Chamber. We are organizing the 13th edition of the Manufacturing Conclave in Pune because Pune is one of the largest and vibrant manufacturing hub of the nation. The entire conclave and evening award session will be conducted by Miss Indrani Malkani. Miss Malkani is an Ashoka Fellow and an expert in public communication. Thank you, Miss Malkani, for being with us today. Now I request Miss Malkani to kindly come to the dais and commence the conclave. Miss Malkani, please.
Thank you, Shoma. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am greatly privileged to be amongst all of you today. On behalf of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we are pleased to have you all at the 13th edition of the Bengal Chamber's Manufacturing Conclave and BCC&I's TATA, Steelium, Manufacturing and MSME Excellence Awards. It promises to be a great day and even a more colorful evening. The theme of today's conclave is Make in India, making India a global manufacturing hub through MSMEs. All the sessions have been curated taking this center theme in perspective. It would not be remiss on my part to say that Industry 4.0 is revolutionizing. Companies manufacture, improve, and distribute their products. Manufacturers are integrating new technologies, including Internet of Things, cloud computing, analytics, and most importantly, artificial intelligence. However, no doubt the importance of Industry 4.0 should not be just to be seen in a restrictive sense, but in a more expansive sense. Using technology, it should be for using technology in a purposeful manner. So it would be good for the planet, good for the people, good for all. May I now request, before I invite the dignitaries to come up, I would like to add that this conclave, which has been put together, will create an ideal platform for knowledge dissemination, assimilation, and networking. Today, we have amongst us the industry leaders who are considered the best minds when it comes to manufacturing. All those who are attending the conclave, all of them are also practitioners. So we have a good mixture of all. May I now please request Mr. Shubir Chakraborty, President of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Managing Director and CEO of Excite Industries Limited. Mr. Chakraborty's profile is for all of us to read. Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty, for being with us. May I now invite Mr. Sanjay Behera, Chairperson, Manufacturing and MSME Committee of the Bengal Chamber, and Chief Sales Manager of Tata Steel. Thank you, Mr. Behera. Dr. Tapan Panda, who is the Professor and Pro-VC of Business and Leadership Division of MIT World Peace University, is also with us. Thank you, gentlemen. May I now request Mr. Behra, Chairperson Manufacturing and MSME Committee of the Bengal Chamber, to kindly address the August gathering now. Thank you, Mr. Behra.
Thank you, Ms. Malkhani. A very good morning on behalf of Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We welcome all our distinct ladies and gentlemen on to this 13th Manufacturing Conclave and Manufacturing Excellence Award. The theme of this conclave is Make in India under Atmanirbhar program to how to make our country a global manufacturing hub. The delegates are from diverse backgrounds across the industry such as steel, engineering, automotive, consulting, banking sector, education and new generation startups. We are proud to announce that this conference is also a part of G20 summit because India, as you know, is the president of G20 countries, and whatever deliberation discussions happen during this session, this will be collated by Bengal Chamber of Commerce and will go to Prime Minister's office and as input under the G20 summit. So this is a proud moment for each of us because you are a part of the think tank. All your inputs will be collected by BCC&I, which will go to Prime Minister's office. There is a very good platform for cross-pollination of ideas and issues faced by the industry, which can be raised for the government policy intervention and sharing on best practices and very good networking among the participants. The event will also bring together key stakeholders of manufacturing, startup, banking sector and MSME ecosystem to share actionable insights, strategy and solution to boost and strengthen the global competitiveness of our manufacturing and MSME sector, which is regarded as the growth engine of the Indian economy. As you know, India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and India is the land of opportunity for investor. $10 trillion of GDP contributing to 10% of global GDP with 1.7 billion of people with the largest working class in the world by the 2030. This is the decade of India, the strength of India you can say. And also as per the vision of our government, by 2047 we will be a developed economy. And the responsibility lies with all of us to reach to that state. And it may be the second largest economy in the next 10 years. The 5 springboards such as focusing on green, leveraging technology such as AI, enabling scalability of such sectors, new sectors to be developed, enabling new and different skill set development, bringing youth and women to the labor participation are the key ingredient to success in the coming years. Also, key is to develop Make in India brand with a strong advertising and branding campaign for the product and services in the world, similar to developed economy like USA, Japan, Korea, even Taiwan. It is currently 5th largest economy in the world with a $3.5 trillion of economy, projected to grow 5.5% in the 2023, which is highest among the G20 countries, and expected to grow at 6.5% for the FY24 and considered to be a bright spot in the world economy at this moment. It is a matter of pride that India is the second largest steel producing country in the world with 120 million ton of steel contributing to 2% of GDP, and the industry is $75 billion of work and planning to ramp up to 300 million ton by the year 2030. And one of the other segment, our automotive industry is $100 billion, contribute to 8% of GDP and also 49% of manufacturing GDP. We are the 3rd largest manufacturers of automotive in the world with sales of 4.25 million units, topping 4.2 million by units in Japan. The electric vehicle market is expected to grow at CAGR of 49% by 2030 and expected to hit 10 million units annual sales by the year 2030. A lot of opportunity are there. And one more interesting fact is that India is a land of opportunity. You see, in the startling figure I am giving you, total FDI received is $532 billion in the last 5 years, which is highest in the world. And these are coming from 162 countries across 61 sectors in not one or two states, across 31 states and union territories in the country. So that means this shows the confidence by the world investors in Indian economy and the high middle class as a market, as well as consumption market, as well as stable democratic leadership. Also, one interesting fact is that two-thirds of our GDP is driven by domestic consumption, and the youngest in the planet with average age of 35 years till the year 2070, which will be over 1 billion people will be under the age of 35, and a big, consumption market. And this is aspirational India, where each one is having the same desire, faith and ability as anyone in Singapore, London or New York. So under Digital India, we are the largest mobile manufacturer in the world and number one in the world in the consumption of digital contents. And 41% of online transactions done in India, which is second to China, where 48% is the online transaction. And also, very interesting fact, Visa is a world leader. At present, our, the online transaction higher than Visa, which operates in more than 100 countries. Very interesting fact. And more fact I am sharing. We are the number 2 in the world in the number of startups in the country, and number 3 in number of unicorns in the world, and cost per acquisition of customer is 1/5 of global average. Very interesting fact. And manufacturing industry not only help in modernizing the agriculture, which forms the backbone of our economy, they also reduce the heavy dependence on people on agricultural economy by providing them jobs in secondary and tertiary sectors, helps in eradication of poverty and unemployment. Of course, manufacturing sector is the lifeblood of technological development. Economies of scale are most easily achieved in the manufacturing sector than in service sector. India's manufacturing sector is a key contributor to the country's economic growth. It accounts for about 15% of India's gross domestic product, GDP, employs 12% of the country's workforce, next to agriculture sector. However, that is much lesser than countries like China and Korea, where manufacturing accounts for 29% of GDP and 27% in Thailand. The importance of manufacturing sector for a country's overall infrastructure for innovation cannot be highlighted enough. Even in advanced countries where manufacturing production is supposed to be on the decline, the bulk of innovation happens in manufacturing. In the US, firms associated mainly with industrial production, but still employ 64% of all scientists and engineers. Every economic activity stimulates another economic activity. Just as manufacturing stimulates the provision of services, services stimulates manufacturing production. In France, for example, 29% of manufacturing workforce contributes indirectly to the production of non-manufacturing output. Only 13% of service workforce contributes indirectly to the production of non-service output. In Singapore, every 100 new manufacturing jobs are associated with 27 new service jobs. By contrast, every 100 new services jobs are associated with only 3 more manufacturing jobs. With the advent of fourth industrial revolution, industry 4.0, smart manufacturing practices, technological breakthrough associated with the things like artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, robotics, internet of things, autonomous vehicle, 3D printing, it will improve the productivity and high quality products at competitive price. What potential does India have to promote the manufacturing sector? India has got the advantage of 3D. 3Ds means democracy, demography and demand for the growth of the manufacturing sectors. India's population at present is 1.42 billion, next to China 1.45 billion, and in few months it will be most populous country in the world, contributing to 17% of world population, and 65% of India's population is below the age of 35. The key advantage when compared to other countries, just like countries like Japan, Europe, there is a aging population, there is a shortage of labor, so it is an advantage to the India. Studies have shown that every job created in the manufacturing sector has a multiplier effect in creating 2 to 3 jobs in the services sectors. High domestic demand, increasing middle class and young population and high returns make India attractive for the manufacturing sector. The manpower cost is lowest when compared to other nations, and our product become very competitive. Key focus for manufacturing sector should be quality, cost, delivery, and innovation in the product and services, and convenience to the customers. What are the issues and challenges faced by this sector? Yeah, stringent due diligence by the banks, because currently banks are hesitant to offer loans for individual activities for various firms due to various NPA. That is a problem also, we understand that thing. Biased trade regime. India's trade regime is biased towards capital intensive big manufacturing, not towards MSME. MSME sector, because of their smaller size, suffer from low productivity, as economies of scale plays a critical role in manufacturing. Currently, India spends 9% of GDP on research and development, a considerably small amount when compared with other developed nations. This prevents the sector to evolve, innovate, and grow. MSME sector is facing a tough competition due to cheap imports from China and other countries that have a free trade agreement with India. I will share a small story. Here, two companies like Kia and Hyundai, they have taken the advantage of the free trade agreement with Korea, and they have lot of import in there. Whereas many steel companies, they have tried enough effort to export to Korea, and they could not able to do, because there is a in those countries, especially Korea, Japan, there is a patriotism to use their own product. They will pay a couple of dollars extra, but they want to use their steel, developed by the domestic mill, which is not. Whereas our consumer, they want to have a cheapest product, they want to import. Why? Indian products they cannot use. That patriotism in using the raw material is missing for our country, which needs to be developed. But it is a case with Japan and Korea. It should be noted on that. The regulatory laws, unfavorable land and labor laws, inadequate connectivity, communication, energy infrastructure are some of the other issues faced by this sector. One of the interesting facts in logistic cost, logistics in India is 6% of GDP, whereas it is 10% in China, 8% in USA and Europe. Our government, headed by Mr. Nitin Gadkari, doing a lot of work, because one of the best minister, I believe, and in reducing the cost by expanding the road network, waterways, upgradation of high-speed railways, locomotive, dedicated freight corridor, and there is a need to connect rail, road transport with waterways, and the project Gati Shakti may help you to develop a multimodal system which will reduce the cost. His target is to reduce to 12 to 13%. That is also a great job. Current geopolitical challenges like trade war, China, Taiwan, US, China, US-Iran tensions, Russia-Ukraine war are also negatively affecting India's manufacturing sector. On labor productivity in India is less when compared to other countries like China due to lag in supply chain management, transportation, production planning, and also skilled manpower. We produce a lot of engineers and management graduates, but employability of index is missing. That our academic should look into that. How we can do, especially they should compare with countries like Japan and Germany, where how they improve that. Various government-led initiatives such as Make in India, Skill India, Shram Suvidha, Defense Procurement Policy, National Manufacturing Policy, Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, Startup India, National Infrastructure Pipeline, Gati Shakti Project, Production Linked Incentive for Atmanirbhar Bharat, which will help us to reach a $5 trillion economy. As many multinational companies are looking to expand their global footprint with China, under China Plus One policy as part of risk mitigation. This will also help us, manufacturing sector, not only make in India for domestic consumption, but our products will compete in the international market to become a global manufacturing hub in the next 5 to 6 years. MSME are backbone of industry since they are vital for economic and social development, and also second largest employer in the country just after agriculture. They account for 8% of GDP, 45% of manufacturing output, and 40% of exports done from India. This sector's competitiveness must be improved to reap the benefit of the globalization that provides new opportunity and access to supply chain across the world. One of the ways to improve the competitiveness among MSME is the customer cluster approach, which address the general problems of taxation, interest rate, or FDI policy, simplified labor laws, increasing the access to credit for MSME sector by categorizing it under the priority sector can also promote the growth because they are considered the budding grounds for new entrepreneurs and innovators. Improving access to credit, technological upgradation, ease of doing business is a must to give a leg up to the manufacturing MSME. Some of the schemes and incentives for MSME sector are priority sector lending, credit guarantee fund scheme, purchase preference policy by public sector, and some big private companies and price preference policy and benefits in tendering to them. Promotion of what is the importance of promotion of research and development focus, which led to innovation in the country. You see, India is spending only 0.6 to 0.7% of its GDP on research and development. You compare country like US, which spends 2.8%, China, which spends 2.1%, South Korea 4.2%, small country like Israel, whose population is 12-13 million, it spends 4.3% of its GDP. The government should give greater emphasis on industrial application oriented R&D and greater collaboration with the private players. Incentives must be provided for private companies to indulge in innovative research through increased access to credit and tax incentive. What India can learn from other countries, I'll share some of the best practices from China and South Korea. China is currently one of the dominant players in the global economy, and its growth is mainly because of its manufacturing house. You see, China manufacturing sector contributes a quarter of the global manufacturing GDP. That is a big number. We have a long way to go. China's comprehensive economic planning, high investment in infrastructure growth, incentives, subsidies, progressive decentralization, and market-oriented reforms led to its manufacturing revolution. Currently, the Chinese government, through its Made in China 2025 strategic plan, is incentivizing the Chinese companies to improve their factories' quality, productivity, and digitization. And learning from South Korea. South Korea has become a high-tech manufacturing country by giving higher emphasis on the purchase of technology and subsidies on R&D investment made by the public and private players. Tax incentives for R&D are provided at every early stage of the organization. The increased investment in research and development led to it gaining a competitive edge in its technology and design. As per the survey in India, for every 100 companies, 95 are micro and micro, 4 are small and medium, only 1 is large. Whereas in most developed economy like US and Europe, 50 to 55 entities out of 100 are micro and 40 are small and medium firms. So you see the role of that, especially country like Germany, it is very high. If India is to become a $5 trillion economy, MSME will need to evolve to the next level and become bigger companies and with a proper strategic plan. It is essential that we enable the medium players to grow into large ones, smaller ones to become a medium companies. Unless we have that pipeline and evolution happening steadily, we'll have just to grow into a vacuum inside the system. And India's manufacturing sector needs to upgrade and reforms for becoming globally competitive. Absence of effective, flexible, and targeted policy support, along with supportive measures like the development of infrastructure, education, would mean the stagnation of the sector. The government needs to address the core problems for the landmark initiative such as Make in India and Skill India to work and manufacturing sector to grow. I give a small example. You see, 100 years ago, do you know which country has got top 10 university in the world? It is not US, UK, it is Germany. Out of 10, 8 universities were from Germany. Do you know after 100 years, which country has got maximum number of top university in the world? It is USA. Almost 6 to 7 university from USA like Stanford, Harvard or Kellogg or MIT. They are the mighty university. Not a single university from Germany is under the 10. That means a lot of work, even academic and education is done by the country, which is not by Germany. So in my suggestion, you see, when I interact with many entrepreneurs as part of my routine jobs, they say the turnover is 100 crores. I want to reach to 200 crores. But what is the step? How to reach? It is not, it is a wishful thinking. So I suggest please implement three box strategy. Box one, manage the present. Whatever they are manufacturing other things, you please do the continuous improvement through Six Sigma, TQM practices, Kaizen, quality circle. This is very important, managing the box one. Box two, selectively abandon the past. You see, might have done a lot of good work in the previously. There may be legacy issue. Some were good, some were bad. Selectively, without having any emotional effect, selectively abandon the past. And box three, what do you want to do 5 to 10 years from now? Please think. That is strategy. Basically, strategy about the leadership in future. You need to have a roadmap for the next 5-10 years on your business strategy. Each working plan, new product development, marketing ramping up, inventing the future and tackling competition for the future. Reinventing the organization is very important. Every year you see Microsoft 6 is there, 7 is there, 8 is there, 10 is there, 11, 12, again 13. iPhone, they are reinventing. 7 is there, 8 is there, now 14 Pro, they are thinking of 15, 16. So each MSME need to reinvent itself every year. How to become, what is the new for the next year? That should be there. And also our country is one of the oldest civilization with for more than 5,000 years and young, vibrant and largest democracy in the world. In our culture, hospitality and giving away to society generously are the key things. We have been grown like that. Indian culture is like that. So in my personal view, there should be a platform where big manufacturing organizations who have achieved excellence in operations, supply chain, human resource practices, technological innovation or some marketing, innovative marketing practices to help MSME. By sharing the best practices, it will help a good ecosystem, and also the competitors should collaborate for the development with the, don't think you are competing, but market is big. India is growing. If 2/3 of the, production is consumed by the domestic market, the market is big. So instead of competitive among the center, they should collaborate across the industry for the developing an ecosystem between big manufacturer and MSME. And in this year of presidency of G20 is also achieving the one thing, that one family, one earth and one future. That means world is one. The Prime Minister vision is entire world is one. We should go that mindset in this thing. And we strongly believe in the ethos and vision initiated by the legendary founder of Tata Group, Mr. Jamsetji Tata, who had pioneered industrial revolution in our country to alleviate poverty, and his famous quote, in a free enterprise, the community is not just another stakeholder in business, but in fact the very purpose of this existence. Thank you for giving this opportunity and for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Behra, for presenting the way forward for today's deliberations. As you rightly said, innovative technology will lead to better policy making, more sustainable business models, new jobs, and new opportunities. For all these outcomes to be more equal with all members of society, more and better collaboration is the way forward. So once again, thank you, Mr. Behra. May I now please request the President of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Shubir Chakraborty, to kindly deliver the theme address of the conclave. Mr. Chakraborty.
Mr. Behra, Dr. Panda, dignitaries in the audience, fellow participants. A very warm good morning to all of you. On behalf of Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is the oldest chamber of commerce in the country, being set up in the year 1833, it is my proud privilege to welcome you all to this August conference. Many people have asked me, why Pune? Why are we doing this in Pune, not in any other part of the country? At BCC&I, we believe in the philosophy of many regions, many cultures, but one India. And because we believe in this philosophy, we recognize and acknowledge the centers of excellence which have developed across the country. So, for agrarian research and agri-sciences, Hyderabad leads the way. In the field of IT and IT-related enterprise, perhaps Bangalore leads the way. Similarly, Pune is the center of excellence for manufacturing, and this has developed over a period of sustained activity right since independence, which is one of the reasons why we are holding this conference here, because we feel the major stakeholders of this conference stay in and around Pune, and it would be useful to deliberate and think about the way ahead in this city. Thank you, Mr. Behra, for giving a very thought-provoking speech. You have practically painted a very wide canvas, leaving little for other speakers to say. So therefore, I will not try to repeat what you have already said, but concentrate or emphasize on a few things which I think are important for the way ahead. So, manufacturing today is, as Mr. Behra said, 15, some figures say it's 17% of the overall GDP of the country, and the aim is to take it to 25%. If we are to develop manufacturing excellence, obviously manufacturing has to perform. Now, why MSME? MSME is important because micro and small, medium enterprises, they occupy today about 40% of the manufacturing activity. So if you take 17% of GDP, then 40% of that is covered by MSME. And this sector has been growing by about 10 to 12% in the past many decades, with COVID years being the exception. Now, why this sector is important? It is because it is one of the highest employment generators in the country. With the largest population in the world, we need to find employment opportunities for people. So that is why this sector is very important, and much of the innovation that takes place perhaps happens in this sector, which is why it is important. Now, what are the challenges? Challenges are that I think the first thing which comes to my mind is that the environment is changing very rapidly. In a fast changing environment, it becomes all the more important for companies, small and big, to adapt. So what is it that is changing? If you look at the supply side, the dynamics which are presently happening on the supply side innovations, they are path breaking in many ways. If you look at enterprises per se, then the ingress of digitalization, IoT, and other such phenomena or concepts are fast entering the manufacturing space. And on the demand side, you have again a high degree of digitization which is taking place. What does this mean for the MSME sector? Is it okay for the MSME sector to remain isolated from these developments? Will they be able to survive in an environment where the general pace or the general direction is towards these approaches? Will it be possible for them to be able to exist in the next decade? My answer is that if you have to survive, then you have to adapt. Why? Because the strongest species on this earth have not been able to survive. The species which have survived down centuries and millennia are those species which have been able to adapt to the changing environment. Case in point is dinosaurs versus the ants. Ants have outlived the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs could not adapt to the environment. So now it becomes imperative for MSMEs to adapt to this fast changing environment, which is why a lot of skilling, a lot of learning is necessary, because resources of MSMEs are limited. And this is where one has to find solutions with academic institutions to see that how this reskilling can take place, how MSMEs can take advantage. Because if you take an MSME, it may be employing, let's say, 20 people. If you take the micro, if they are able to reduce 10 people from that 20, it's a 50% reduction of their manpower cost. So reducing 10 people from a large company like telco does not mean anything. But for a micro enterprise, it's a difference between survival and extinction. So therefore, the amount of benefit which can accrue to the micro and small enterprises through adaptation to digitization can be immense. And this is where I think adaptability has to play a major role. Mindsets have to change. Also, most of the micro and small enterprises, they are in the B2B segment because they do not have the wherewithals to be able to directly address the customer. So either they employ intermediaries or they may be selling to companies like Amazon and so on and so forth, or they may be employing some other channels of distribution. But digitization has made it immensely possible for micro and small enterprises to be able to reach the ultimate customer. And this is one area which needs to be explored in depth, because if they can do it, then it improves their profitability and their sustainability. Because the margins which they are passing off to middlemen need not be passed on. And digitization provides an avenue for doing that. So this is another important sector which needs to be explored in depth. Now, we are talking about manufacturing here and our vision to grow, go ahead. For this, we require people. Now, the obvious answer is, if it's manufacturing, we require more engineers. So we have a plethora of engineering colleges. Pune is one city where there are lots of engineering colleges. Where are the engineers going? You have to ask this question. 40 years, 50 years back, when an engineer graduated from an engineering college, his ambition was to work in the field of engineering, in the shop floor, learn engineering skills. Today, all engineers, irrespective of their discipline, land up in the IT sector. So, while Shudip is here with me, I hope you won't mind, but my question is simple. Do you require 4 years of specialized engineering study to be able to work in the IT sector? If the aim and ambition of the people who are entering engineering colleges is to work in the IT sector, and I'm not demeaning the IT sector. IT sector has a huge potential and certainly needs people. But does it require chemical engineers? Does it require metallurgical engineers? Does it require civil engineers? Answer is obviously no. So why is the country wasting so much of resources in developing civil engineering skills, imparting those skills to a candidate who then lands up in the IT sector? It is better that IT skills are should be imparted to those people. So the point is, while IT is fine, but you have to understand one thing, IT serves which sector? IT basically serves the manufacturing sector and the service sector. So you cannot neglect the core manufacturing sector and only develop in the field of IT. It will not sustain itself. So this is something which one needs to think about. And I think a lot of national resources can be saved if we, think about this and have a holistic change in our education policy. Because country needs good engineers. Today, a company like L&T, it has a construction division. It requires civil engineers to work there. So, while on the one hand, we have a plethora of, engineering colleges, we are perhaps not developing the right skills to feed into the manufacturing sector. And if this goes unabated, I fear one day we may have to import basic engineering skills from abroad to be able to feed into the manufacturing sector. If you have to grow into a $5 trillion economy, if you have to 25% manufacturing, where will that skill come from? So this is something that one needs to ponder, both from the point of view of the educational institutions as well as the students who are today. In my young days, I wanted a housing loan to finance a small flat. I had to visit so many of these banks and people ask so many questions. Today, there are 25 banks wanting to lend me money when I don't require it. So this is a mismatch between demand and supply. Now, this is not an easy problem because it has not been sorted down the ages. But we need to find a solution because MSME sector in the micro industry which wants to grow, loan has to be given based on the potential of the idea, based on the potential of the proprietor who is actually owning that unit, rather than on how much he has got. But unfortunately, banks don't look at that. They look at collateral and so on and so forth. So we have to find a solution, because if we can find an easy solution or an acceptable solution, then I'm sure the MSME sector can grow by leaps and bounds. Because one of the things which is a major impediment in their path is bank finance. So I'm sure this conference will dwell on this as well. So while we have a very laudable target before us, which has been set by none other than our Honorable Prime Minister, and the country wants to grow very rapidly with that aim in mind. But what happens is that there is so much potential to be unleashed, so much of opportunity. If you do not go about it in a coordinated and a regulated way, there is a possibility that we can go astray. Because there are so many things happening in the economy. There's so much of growth, so much of potential. So while the strategy is beautiful, I will quote Winston Churchill, who is said to have observed once, "However beautiful the strategy, you should occasionally look at the results." So I think this conference, which is held yearly, and this is the 13th edition, is a good forum to assess for ourselves as to where we are going and how far we have gone in being able to achieve those results. This should be stock-taking time for all of us in this sector. So, in conclusion, I would like to quote Alfred Nobel, who all of you know, Swedish chemist, engineer, inventor, businessman, and philanthropist. He said, "If I have over 1,000 ideas and only one turns out to be good, I am satisfied." So let's hope today's conclave gives you a few ideas that may one day germinate into full-fledged business strategies and practices. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty, for such a stimulating address, you have cited clear and practical questions and setting the framework very clearly for the conference to proceed. So thank you, Mr. Chakraborty, once again. And may I now request Dr. Tapan Panda, Professor and Pro VC of Business Leadership, Division of MIT World Peace University, to kindly deliver the keynote address of the conclave. Dr. Panda, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning to all of you. Let me first welcome you to the city of Pune. As it was talked about, Pune is one of those interesting places where you find manufacturing and intelligence have gone together and have created successful business models here. So thank you, Bengal Chamber of Commerce, for selecting this city. I'd also like to thank Bengal Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to speak to both of you. Dear Mr. Behra, President of Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Chakraborty. Very interesting time that we are passing through. Why I'm here as an academician, probably outside the domain of teaching and researching. I do work with Niti Aayog on a couple of policy issues because I spent long years in IIM as a professor. Outside that, I work at two spaces: when there is a startup and the angel investing space, and when companies are stuck in the middle, then I work with them to give them access to market and access to finance so that they are successful and they can get their scale. Probably that's the other side of the story that makes me to come here and speak a couple of things to both of you. Now, when you look at the theme of today's event, where they talk about excellence, and particularly manufacturing excellence, how do we really look at the idea of excellence? Is the excellence that talks about increase in productivity, it talks about increase in efficiency, or increase in competitiveness? How do you really look at excellence? When you bring productivity, of course, we understand mechanization, digital way of doing your business, additive manufacturing, all of them can help you in increasing your productivity levels. When you look at efficiency, when you take up manpower, train the manpower, reskill them, we have a target scaling strategy these days that we are talking about in different clusters. Now, obviously, efficiency will go higher there. And efficiency is basically looked at in two ways. You have something called information asymmetry, where the amount of information at the manufacturer's end and amount of information at the consumer end, there's a gap. You need to solve that problem. Or there is market dysfunctionality, and you try to solve the problem. One of the regions, one of the points that Mr. Chakraborty raised about how the distribution channel takes away the large share of profit, and manufacturer is left with few amount of profit because of the market dysfunctionality issue which is involved in this case. So that takes our attention to another dimension called competitiveness. So most of us, those who follow our competitor, China, and always benchmark China in many of the things, we understand that when you look at productivity and competitiveness, there is a factor called ULC, called unit labor cost. And once you reduce the unit labor cost, then your competitiveness goes higher. So look at whether US economy is productive or not, answer is yes, but whether US economy is competitive or not, answer is no. Because ULC comes to the picture and China gets scored there. But as manufacturer of small and medium enterprises, as well as large manufacturing companies, I think we should look for China in a different way. Let me make it a bit anecdotal. At some point of time, there was a king, and the king will come to the balcony, and the king would look at people going on the street. On a particular day, he will see a person passing by, and every time he sees that person, he gets irritated. He doesn't know the reason, he doesn't know the person, but he gets irritated. So one day he asks his minister, please go back and find out why I get irritated seeing this fellow. So the minister in disguise follows and lands up in this person's house and finds that this person has accumulated and found he has also sandalwood. So he asks about how come you have got so much of sandalwood. He says the king's son is going to be coronated. That time they will need a lot of sandalwood and I'll sell them and get good price. So I think we need to look at competition in different way. Try to learn a lot of things from our competitors. As a professor of business, when you look at history of many companies, you will find out a company like 3M or many companies. When you look at them, what made them to succeed for such a long period of time, you will find out they never benchmark themselves with competition. And we understand today because of technology, the definition of boundary has resolved. There's nothing called a boundary. You can say the competition can come from outside the boundary. What you define as your industry, it may come from outside. So these companies are very different companies. So in 1985, Buffet wrote an article which is quite contrast to what Professor Michael Porter talked about. He says complementary advantage. He said these companies are doing great because they don't benchmark with the competitors in that way. Why I'm bringing this issue? Because if ULC is a deciding factor, and in India we cannot really manage that, then we have to look at a different window to look at the person who goes in the street and collects the sandalwood there. When we talk about excellence, it can be seen in two ways. Like Sir was talking about evolution of species and how the dinosaurs did not survive and ants survive. I think when you look at excellence and growth, you can grow to be an elephant or you can grow to become a horse. But don't expect the elephant to run as fast as the horse, or don't expect the horse to be as in the size of the elephant there. And because they have different functions. The elephant has a function of clearing. Suppose in the forest, in the woods, the elephant will clear it so that it can create the path. It stands for that part. Where we understand a horse is someone who will run faster. So speed and innovation matters in today's time. And as Sir was referring about, technology helps in the process of speed and innovation. Faster you adapt, you grow faster in that sense there. So speed, focus and innovation are the elements which are associated with hearts. We don't have to really choose the path of an elephant to succeed. If somebody has succeeded, rather we can choose the path of a horse to do that part of it. Now if this is the possibilities, what are the ways by which we can do it? Early 90s, when I was a young guy in one of the IIMs teaching there, that's the time when Korean majors were entering into the Indian market. And they were looking at some of the marketing support for them to succeed in Indian market, which many of them could succeed at that point of time. At that point of time, there's a degree of hostility when you look at foreign competition which was coming there. And then people started slowly collaborating, worked with Hero. So Hero Honda happened, Bajaj happened with some other companies. So we started doing collaborations. And then we decided, okay, these are fine, but we can also have competition, right? For example, the distribution portfolio of Unilever is large compared to Procter & Gamble and Marico. So in the urban markets, Procter & Gamble and Marico compete. But in the rural markets, they are partners together because they can take the benefit of deeper distribution of Marico, and Marico can take the benefit of the portfolio that Procter & Gamble has got there. So you have to look at how this competition is happening in that case. Many people have always this idea that government will give you a lot of benefits, which is natural because I understand if you look at a painter, the government should play the role of a painter. That's a conversation in our public policy debates when we have how we should have inclusive public policy where industry becomes a part of that exercise. So painter decides the frame in which he is going to paint, and the painter decides what kind of elements he is going to bring into that, a forest, a house, a river. As a child we have painted, and the painter decides what kind of colors we'll have. But many of you, those who visit a lot of painting exhibitions and you see the same painting, you have got different interpretations, isn't it? And these interpretations are not necessarily the same way the painter has designed it. For example, if you see a horse in a painting, you have 100 ways of explaining what a horse is. Horse is a very popular character in Indian painting. Somebody says this is passion, somebody says sex, somebody says Saraswati. They have their own explanations there. Now, this is about how you really work on the mindset part. So what are the challenges? Some of the challenges have been raised nicely. I think Mr. Bera's paper was more academic than what I'm talking about, so I thought I'll make it more anecdotal in character. If you look at that part, so we have basically 4 kind of problems that stops our manufacturing sector to grow. The first kind of problem is actually what we call as product market and ownership barriers. There are certain sectors where the government still holds the control over, and if it is not strategic and is not that much of important for us, there should be private partnership. So there is a ownership barrier that needs to be looked at. The second factor is the land barriers. Particularly this is important when you imagine about clusters, micro enterprises working in clusters. Why I'm raising this is because a lot of us think that additive manufacturing is going to be the future. In that case, if you go by parts, unless you have got a cluster, then the network effect, that the benefit that you get will not happen. So what happens when you have got these barriers, which is called the land market barrier? Many of you today don't celebrate Mr. Adani, but you understand that in between he has become the largest land bank owner of the country because he has deputed people to hold land there. Maybe that's another kind of a model. The third element is the labor barriers that we have got there. So I don't know how many companies are there which can really fire employees for non-performance. There are laws which stops you from firing people from non-performance, and that overall impacts the kind of return that you get on the capital that you have employed. So in that case, I think there is requirement of a lot of reforms as far as the labor laws are concerned. The last part is infrastructure issues. As I was talking about the painting part of it, I think that's the government's role there where the infrastructure issue can happen. Very interestingly, Mr. Chakravarti also referred about, both of the speakers before me have referred about increase in demand in the domestic market, right? It's not necessary that we should always look at export markets. Yeah, so I was looking into the CAGR data for per capita consumption and what are their growth rates in last 10 to 15 years. I found out electrical machineries have grown 23%, food and beverages 17%, motor vehicles at 15%, base metal like steel 12%, textile and apparels at 12%. I think these are indicators which says that there is an ample opportunity for small and medium enterprises to grow in the business. So I looked at two roles. First one, where we can establish, which are the industrial sectors where we can establish leadership and where we can take a fair share of the market. For example, aluminum, apparel, auto component, iron and steel, jewelry, leather. This is where we can take leadership in that sense. But large market share can be in basic chemicals, commercial heating and air conditioning equipments, computer hardwares. They're the sectors where we can take a fair share from the market there. So how this is possible? So I won't take much time. There are three things that I'd like to talk about for improving labor productivity and bolstering operations, what we should do. There are few key operational areas that you should focus on at the policy making level, at the trade association level. First one I have defined as a technical systems, right? We should focus more on the technical systems. What does that mean? The way corporate resources are deployed to meet customs need at different levels, right? So what the cost and where are being deployed in that case? Basically, I look at supply chain management and logistics as a big challenge as far as technical systems are concerned. Management infrastructure is a second component which talks about the formal structures which you have got. Whereby you can manage the technical systems, for example, talent management and capability building. I referred about what Sir was talking about, why a chemical engineer or mechanical engineer should go to information technology domain. But if you go back and look at the evolution of information technology part of it, they were initially focused on those kind of profiles. But because of the growth, they did some of the capacity building exercises. If you visit Infosys or any of them, you will find out they have themselves built up institutions whereby they can build the capacity of the people there. Today, there is a large gap between what is being taught in universities and what is being practiced in the industry. I think both of them should come together and work towards the similar kind of capacity building exercise, which happened some years before in the information technology space that can come into manufacturing space. The last part is, of course, about capabilities, mindset, and behavior of the people that we have to look at. And a lot of models are being developed. I don't want to look really academician in that case. Overall, I think it's important for us to focus on improving capital productivity and labor productivity. If you can focus on that part, things will become very efficient in that way. Now, I'll finish that with another anecdotal story. This story is about how you want to become a killer, right? Killer, shooter, or somebody who is in the forest. So there are two ways to do that part. No? One way is like the tribal people do. So the tribal people will play music on one side, will play a sound on the other side, put fire on the other side. So all the animals will be scared and they will start running into one direction. And you have to stand in front of them and catch them. Either you will catch a mouse or you will catch a small animal. And the life of that animal is once. You will eat it once and the life is over, right? The other way is to catch an elephant. Now you play sound on one side and play fire on the other side and then stand in front of the elephant. You know what will happen. Elephant will come over you. So the method that you need to follow is very different. So as the things are changing and policies are changing, it is important for us to change our mindset and move out from the idea of always being small, not being able to grow, into ideas that it is possible, and there are models which are available. I think South Korea enjoyed the maximum growth and development during a military ruling period. 17 years of military ruling, and most of the growth happened because they supported blindly the chaebols, the family businesses like LG and Samsung, and they became very successful. So I expect that things will change definitely, because professors will live for the future in an optimistic way. There are new business models which are coming up there. Additive manufacturing is one I talked about. Artificial intelligence and deeper machine learning is going to be utilized for designing products are there. So somewhere we are finding out the level of capability and the level of capacity which currently rules the manufacturing will have a jump, not an evolutionary process, but an exponential jump. It will just jump up because of usage of technology, both terms of newer way of doing business and the scale which are possible there. Now, if it is a jump, and many of us have enjoyed in the jump, during the jump, we don't have any link to the earth on which we are standing. Those who have done bungee jumping, or they have done very height from height they have jumped, they understand how helpless you feel for the first few minutes. But after that, you enjoy your fall or rise in that way. I'm sure in next 2 days period of time, whatever time is available with you, we'll focus on this part of it and come out with the last point that we have referred about capabilities, mindset and behavior. If that happens, then we don't have to play to a tune which is part Chinese in character. Rather, we have to have our Indian tune by which we can achieve our goals, because we have a large domestic market to cater to and also export to look at. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for all your time and patient hearing. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Dr. Panda. It was really very exhilarating hearing your anecdotes, and being not from the manufacturing side, I personally felt extremely, enthused seeing some of the life teachings that you brought to the table today. Thank you for teaching us a different way to look at things and perspectives. Whilst Dr. Panda has shown us a framework that how we will proceed with the conference, let us also now see our host, the Bengal Chamber, a little bit about the Bengal Chamber. May we have the video, please? It's always a pleasure to be proud of our heritage, and Bengal Chamber brings that heritage into our business and all our companies, and certainly today, in a seat of heritage that is the Pune city. Thank you so much, Mr. Chakraborty, Mr. Bera, Dr. Panda, for carving out your time from your busy schedule to be part of the conclave, set the ball rolling, getting all of us into the mood as we take the conference forward. May I request Mr. Bera, Chairperson of the Manufacturing and MSCB Committee of the Bengal Chamber, to kindly present a memento to Mr. Chakraborty first. A memento to Dr. Panda, please, Mr. Bera. We now conclude